Notre Dame's the opening favorite in this game against Penn State, but honestly, for a variety of factors, the Nittany Lions should be the ones favored over the Fighting Irish.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko. I'm your host of the show, and help me welcome back a very special guest. That is Brian Smith over on the other side. Talks recruiting here for the Locked On Podcast Network. Florida State, SEC football. Is also a longtime Notre Dame fan, so he's going to be the Fighting Irish expert for this one. As we're getting some more early analysis for the Orange Bowl, Penn State versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame's the early 1.5 point favorite per our friends over at FanDuel. So Brian, let's talk about that and then analyze this matchup and why the spread is the way it is, but why this game is projecting to be so close. Now, personally, I think Penn State should be the 1.5 point favorite or 2 points or whatever. I think that Penn State, going into this matchup, I know we're going to talk about some health concerns on for both teams, but even if all the players that we're going to discuss are available for this game, I do think the Nittany Lions have the edge and should be considered the favorite in this one.
I wouldn't have a problem with it either way. I was a little surprised where I saw Notre Dame opened up the favorite, but it is what it is. They try to get it to where the money's half and half, so keep that in mind.
Yes.
And Notre Dame has a ton of people that gamble, so that might be part of the reason for that. But and they gamble a lot of money. So the injury factor for the Irish leaves me a little concerned. Jeremiah Love wearing a brace is not a normal thing, and at the end of the game, he had that on the side. He didn't come back in, but he had it on. So we don't really have any idea. They put the lines out there because they have to. Nobody knows who's playing right now. So that's the other part of this. And because of the nature of this and it being a week away, there's two things that I know. James Franklin will lie and Marcus Freeman will lie. Those two are locks. So you can do whatever you want. If you gamble on this game, you're literally throwing money into the wind because you don't know who's going to play.
Yeah.
So probably not the best game to bet on
at this point in time until, and that's, I'm glad you bring that up, that Franklin is going to keep Abdul Carter's status close to the vest. And the same thing, I wouldn't expect anything less from Marcus Freeman, especially with some of the key players and Brian, and like I said, you know that all the other teams you cover in addition to following Notre Dame, so you know this team inside and out. It's truly an insult to injury here because Riley Mills, one of the better defensive players, certainly an impact player for this Notre Dame defense that is objectively top 5, was already out going into the Georgia game. He was lost after the Indiana game, in the middle of the Indiana game. And now you add a Jeremiah Love, and then some other players got banged up as well.
Yeah, Love was injured, didn't return at the end. I don't know if he could have played. That's debatable. They're pretty deep at running back, but they are. Jeremiah Love is – I'll take him outside of maybe Scadaboo. I'd probably take him over anybody, to be honest. I mean, he's really good, but he's banged up. He's been hurt for a while, and at this point, he's not going to be healthy before this season's over. That's reality. They also had Xavier Watts go out for a little while with some kind of shoulder injury, and Howard Cross III, who's their other D tackle, who was preseason All-American by some, he got banged up in the fourth quarter. And it's like, okay, who is going to be eligible to put on a helmet at some point? Because they're not just good players. These are guys that have a chance to get paid. Yeah. That's really hard, and you don't have another week off or whatever. It's just 1 week, then you play a physical team like the Nittany Lions. So to your original point, if you wanted to favor Penn State, I'd get it, and I was a little surprised that Notre Dame was 1.5 point favorite.
It's, for me personally, it's even without these injuries factored in. Let's say Abdul Carter's available, Jeremiah Love, all the players that you just named. I guess maybe since we knew that he was going to be out for the season, maybe you don't include a Riley Mills. But let's say this game before Georgia and Boise State happened. I think Penn State is slightly better, and especially coming off of this Georgia game. And I know that Georgia's defense is still insanely talented, but watching how Notre Dame's offense operates, based on that Boise State game, Penn State can sell out and defend the run. Now, Maddox Madsen obviously does not do or is not capable of what Riley Leonard is capable of. Leonard is a more cerebral quarterback. He's a veteran quarterback, so you can't just you can't scheme things up to trick him, to fool him. And then you have this stable of running backs that you can turn to and balance everything out. But Notre Dame really does rely a lot on running the football and using Riley Leonard's legs. This team does not throw the football effectively. Is that because Riley Leonard's just not as capable as a passer, Brian? Or is it because, kind of similar to Penn State's wide receiver room, and without Tyler Warren, we're talking about Penn State's wide receivers and Notre Dame's wide receivers. For the Fighting Irish, the wide receivers just aren't as good as you would like them to be if you're Notre Dame.
I think that's a little bit of both. Mitchell Evans has gotten better, and they've used him in certain situations. Tonight, they couldn't block the edge against Jay Walker and some of those guys. Mm-hmm. If Carter plays, I expect Notre Dame to use tight end. They're going to have to do it differently. Denbrock was pretty stubborn about letting his freshman tackle go one. Look, he's just not good enough. He's just not good enough.
Yeah, he's not where he should be right now. Yeah,
he should be playing guard or on the bench. Their starting left tackle for this season got hurt in practice 2 of fall camp. You can't ever lose your left tackle. Notre Dame is out 6 starters from the start. It's insane. But they keep finding ways to win because they play such good situational football. Obviously, tonight is ad nauseum on how you do that. But at some point, they're going to have to adjust a little bit. They did have some pretty creative play calling on finding ways to get phase on the ball, etc. But at some point, you're going to have to throw it too. I don't think Penn State will do very well against Notre Dame's blitz. I don't think they'll score a ton, but they could wear Notre Dame out. They're certainly going to block better than Georgia. Georgia's O-line, by the way, tonight was very underwhelming as a run. It makes no sense because all those kids are 4 and 5 stars. That doesn't make any sense to me. And Notre Dame's, they've lost 3 defensive linemen, and they still did that to them. They had 60 yards rushing or something like that. So they're good, but you got to score. So your point is very valid. Notre Dame's going to have to find a way to score via the pass, and I expect A.J. Harris and the other guys for Penn State to, play pretty aggressively. They'll mix it up a little bit, but they're going to have to hit plays down the middle. Mitchell Evans is my guess is going to be their answer. He's just as talented as Tyler Warren in a lot of ways, but he got hurt late last year at the ACL, and I don't know if he's still all the way 100% back. Okay. That takes forever on a big guy. He was awesome last year, but then once he got hurt, he may never be the same again. And then they're going to have to get phase on and Greathouse the ball down the field. Can they block well enough to do that? I'm not sure about that. Their offensive line left a lot to be desired in pass protection tonight.
It's an even matchup. It's a lot of strength on strength for Penn State versus Notre Dame. This isn't a mismatch, but there are certainly things that Notre Dame likes to do, and Penn State actually matches up well with them. Let's talk about that more, some of the X's and O's, and where Penn State can get its yardage, can get its manufacture, its points from, because it really doesn't get any tougher than this. Yes, there was Ohio State and Oregon, but Notre Dame, like I said, objectively has a top 5 defense, and you said, hey, Penn State's not going to be able to score points easily. So how did the Nittany Lions do it? We'll tell you more on the other side of this break. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. You can bet on which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, passing yards, rushing yards, receiving yards. There's so many options. And if we look over at FanDuel.com, we can see the lines for Penn State versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a 1.5-point favorite per FanDuel, minus 122 on the money line. Penn State plus 102 on the money line. Total is set at 44.5. If you like those lines, you can bet them over at FanDuel.com. And remember, you will just visit FanDuel.com and you will have a chance at $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So this is going to be a defensive struggle. Penn State's defensively is top 10. Notre Dame is top 5 defensively. I mean, I look at that game against Georgia, and Georgia that was going to rely on the run game because Carson Beck was out, because Gunnar Stockton is a dual threat quarterback, and you have Trevor Etienne, the younger brother of Travis Etienne, and just some running back depth, maybe not comparable to a Notre Dame or a Penn State, but you still have capable 4- and 5-star players that are going to be able to get the job done. You mentioned the defensive line injuries for Notre Dame, Brian, and Georgia still averaged 2.1 yards per carry against Notre Dame's defense. I mean, that's really saying something. Al Golden is the defensive coordinator for Notre Dame, Penn State connection, right? This one's going to be personal for him. Brian, if you had to, you know this Notre Dame team better than I do, what are the, I guess, not necessarily the weakest links, but maybe not the strongest strengths of this team? And maybe it's the defensive line because of how banged up they are.
The D-line still played pretty well. I still think it's more a product of Georgia shooting themselves in the foot. Like, some of their pass protection technique was, quite honestly, underwhelming. And Notre Dame took advantage like they should. They had 4 sacks against the mobile quarterback. I mean, Gunnar Stockton's pretty mobile, and he got hit several other times right when he was releasing. But Penn State, I think, will do better, and I imagine they'll max protect a little better because I know Drew's got some mobility. He's not as mobile as Stockton. Right. They're going to more deep shots, semi-roll, quick passes, and no offense to Stockton on this part, Drew understands post-snap reads, and Notre Dame played with Gunner's head. Their defense is not friendly for anybody. I don't want a guy making his first start. It is uber complex, and they're going to bring a lot of things, and they'll catch Drew a few times, and he'll probably get hit and sacked, but he'll probably have some one-on-one shots that he's going to make where Gunner missed, especially once we got to about halftime, early third quarter, after he got hit a few times, he stopped doing like his percentage went way down. He hit his first 7, but after that, he was like 50%. After you get smoked a few times, I get it. Drew Allar's tough. He will take some shots and get back up. He's a very competitive kid, and I still remember him from Elite 11. He can throw from a lot of different arm angles, do things that Stockton, I'm 5'10", maybe. I don't think he's 6 foot. Drew's a bigger guy. He'll be able to see over the line more. So I'm curious. Obviously, you're going to throw to Tyler Warren screens and a lot of short stuff because Notre Dame brings so much heat. You got to get rid of the ball quick. I'm curious which receivers they try to take shots with. Notre Dame's corners are really good. Their whole secondary has guys that are going to go to the combine. That's not easy. You can't just throw it up or it'll go to the other direction. But at the same time, you're not going to run for 200 yards against Notre Dame either just by lining up a pound. You got to mix it up and hope to break a couple, which Singleton certainly can. I'm not sure how they're going to do it exactly. Which guy or guys do you think they'll try to take deep shots with?
Well, it pays to be the Penn State podcast host, right? Amari Evans is going to be that guy. Trey Wallace. They can use Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen out of the backfield. I know that Trevor Etienne was an option in the passing game, but granted, Georgia was playing from behind, so they needed to pass more because I do look at that. And Notre Dame, this is still a respectable number. You allowed 7.3 yards per completion or yards per attempt, pardon me, for Gunnar Stockton, and he's not that great of a passer. But Notre Dame at least showed some vulnerability in the secondary. I don't disagree that that's one of the better strengths. I would point to the fact that Notre Dame forces a lot of turnovers. They get their hands on the football one way or another. Maybe it's not always in the form of an interception and they have 18 on the season going into that Sugar Bowl game, but they also had 50 plus passes defended. So Drew Allar doesn't routinely turn the ball over. Like, he will make the decision to protect the possession as opposed to trying to take a risk, trying to take a gamble. That's just how he's naturally predisposed. But from time to time, he has a couple of those bad passes where you cannot turn the football over against Notre Dame, because when I look at Texas A&M and Georgia, these comparable opponents for Penn State, and how does Notre Dame win those games? By having a zero turnovers and forcing 2 against that respectable opponent.
That's a big part of it. Timing is also an impact. If you look at the game, what was it? Notre Dame scored 17 points in 54 seconds. That's one of the wildest swings at the end of a half to start a second half you're going to have. Like, Georgia needed to get a 3 and out to start the second half and get the ball back. Well, they didn't get a chance to get a 3 and out because the guy scores on a kickoff. By the way, that was a horrific effort on Georgia's part. That was bad. Yeah. Guy with 4.3 speed gets a lane, it's not going to end well. I don't think Penn State's going to make that same error. So as long as they don't have that kind of play and Drew doesn't just drop a snap or something stupid like that, I think Penn State will be in a lot better spot, because Penn State is similar to Notre Dame and how they're built. They don't do well from behind. It's not very likely, and Notre Dame will grind you to death because they're deep at running back, and Riley Leonard's like a running back. So Georgia needed to get a lead, and they got 3-0, but that wasn't much. And once they got down, it took them out of their normal rhythm, and they were done. Penn State would have a chance in that scenario, but I doubt it gets to that. I expect neither team will be up more than about 7 points at any point in this game. I think Drew Allar will protect the ball, and they will probably be very consistent. And like Georgia was, I think, 2 for 12 on third down. As good as Notre Dame is, I highly doubt they're going to get 2 for 12 against Drew Allar. So this game will be in the low 20s is my guess. And I can't see Notre Dame holding Penn State to 10 points. So Penn State should have a chance to control their own destiny. It's going to come down to some 50-50 balls down the field. And I really don't – I know Kotelnicki's great at scheming stuff up. How are they going to get the ball to Warren? That they come up with something different all the time. And Notre Dame takes a lot of chances with those blitzes. He's going to get some chances to have some one-on-one plays to make guys miss, get extra yardage. That'll be a major factor too.
I like that you point out the fact that, yes, at their core, Notre Dame and Penn State are built similarly. They have two intelligent quarterbacks. They don't routinely make mistakes. They have dual threat capabilities, but Riley Leonard is more of your true traditional dual threat quarterback. They rely on elite defenses with top playmakers, Abdul Carter, guys in the secondary for Notre Dame. You can make the argument that Notre Dame's defense collectively is slightly better. Brian, the difference is, Notre Dame's passing offense, whether because they haven't needed it to be or because it truly has not adapted, it is just not effective throwing the football. If you come, and it's a stark difference. This is the thing we'll finish up on here, Brian. Penn State is number 12 in yards per pass attempt. Penn State can get into a shootout. They can play from behind. Notre Dame is another one of those teams. Granted, it is harder to put them from behind on the scoreboard, but they're barely top 70 when it comes to yards per pass attempt. So you're going from a fringe top 10 passing attack to barely a top 75 passing attack that averages 7.1 yards per pass attempt. And I know it doesn't seem like much, 8.5 to 7.1, but number 12 compared to top 75, that's a big difference. And if Notre Dame does happen to get from behind, play down by 10 points, Penn State would have them right where they want them.
Notre Dame would probably still run the ball. They're going to be who they are. That would be my guess, and they would live with it. They've improved their passing attack, and once they got the lead tonight, I don't know what motivation they had, because Gunner, you could see early third quarter, he was struggling. They weren't going to throw the ball. But Faison is the key. Can Penn State take him away? Greathouse is a pretty good slot player, but none of their other receivers have been consistent. It's always somebody different. So I don't know how that's going to work for Penn State. I don't know who they're going to put AJ on, et cetera. But if they play really well outside, Notre Dame could struggle to score 20 points. Absolutely.
Brian, I appreciate the time as always, the insight and analysis, whatever we need you for here on the show, whether it's recruiting, whether it's the transfer portal, and you cover Florida State, Auburn. Now we're talking about Notre Dame here. Anything that I need from you, you always deliver. Thank you so much for the thoughtful commentary, and can't wait to have you back on the show in the not too distant future.
Thank you much. Looking forward to it.
And still to come on this episode of Locked On Nittany Lions, we're going to talk more about that Notre Dame passing attack because it struggles. Can that be the key to a Penn State victory? I'll tell you about it more on the other side of this break. And today's show is also brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me. I've had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money makes it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is the personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Brings everything together all in one place. Whether it's subscriptions, spending habits, benefits or even goals you want to hit in the new year, Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. And one of the best features is the subscription tracker. You can use it to cancel services that you don't use anymore, and you'll save a ton. Plus, with the goals feature, you can automatically set aside money for your future, and then there's no more stressing about budgeting every single month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions, reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedoncollege today. That is rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Again, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. This game is going to be a defensive struggle. One way or another, you're getting a top 5 defense in Notre Dame against a top 10 defense in Penn State. And Brian makes a good point when he says that, yes, at their core, I agree with this. Penn State and Notre Dame are built similarly. Cerebral quarterback, wide receivers are a question mark, but you can rely on the ground game. And Notre Dame's offensive line is really good, and Penn State's offensive line is peaking. We have seen the best football from Penn State's offensive line, the way that they've been playing recently, and going up against formidable opponents. Oregon's front seven is not a pushover. SMU's front seven is not a pushover. And we saw against Boise State that they played better than they are advertised. They gave Penn State fits. That is not because, Penn State struggled. No, Boise State gave them everything they could handle and then some. But this passing attack, or lack thereof, I should say, this passing attack that is limited for Notre Dame is the key for a Penn State victory. If Penn State can build that lead. Now, easier said than done, because Notre Dame's defense isn't just going to let you do that, but that's the formula for Notre Dame to win these games. Defense will force turnovers, not give up, not surrender a lot of points, and then the rushing attack can just continue to wear you down, whether it's Riley Leonard or Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price. I mean, Notre Dame has a lot of options to turn to in its ground game, but the wide receivers, the passing attack is a question mark. Tyler Warren and Drew Allar as a passer become the difference. Drew Allar is a better passer than Riley Leonard. Those two, when it comes to understanding the game, processing the game, and post-snap reads and being able to read a defense, they're pretty similar. I might have my bias and say that Drew Allar is slightly better, but it's difficult to tell which one is better as far as a student of the game. They both limit mistakes. They don't turn the football over very often, and they can read a defense. But the difference is the overall availability of the players that they can throw to, the pass catchers. Notre Dame just does not have a lot of elite weapons. They don't use their running backs out of the backfield. And Penn State's targets, I mean, Tyler Warren was a Heisman contender. Notre Dame doesn't have someone like Tyler Warren. I know what Brian said about a Mitchell Evans at that tight end spot, but he's not fully back to that, recovering from injury. He's still a good player, but even if he was at his peak, could we say that he's a Heisman contender? Penn State has that. I've seen enough from Amari Evans and Trey Wallace. Now, I like what Jordan Faison gives Notre Dame. I think he's a weapon in the fact that he can take a handoff, he can take a screen pass, he can be a quick target in the short game, on a slant route. He can also give you some speed down the sideline. But AJ Harris takes that away. In that same breath, Trey Wallace and Amari Evans are going to have their work cut out for them, because Notre Dame's secondary is one of the best in college football. It is going to be a challenge to go up against the likes of, defensive backs across the board, an Aiden Schuler, a Xavier Watts. These guys are extremely talented for Notre Dame, and it's not going to be easy getting yardage. So if all the attention is focused on Tyler Warren, can Trey Wallace, can Amari Evans, do you get something from Liam Clifford? Do you get something from a Julian Fleming in this game where they are able to win their one-on-one matchups? And arguably it's going to be difficult. It is going to be very difficult. So for Penn State, if you can get some yardage, if you can push the football through the passing game and force Notre Dame to go away from running the football. Notre Dame's offensive line is great in down blocking. They can run the football effectively. Passing the football, they are not good at it. They are, in terms of yards per attempt, I like looking at yards per play, yards per pass, yards per rush. Notre Dame has a top 3 rushing attack. Penn State has a top 12 passing attack Notre Dame barely has a top 75 passing attack. So if you can force Notre Dame into passing situations, put A.J. Harris on Jordan Faison, maybe that ground game isn't as effective as it could be. Jeremiah Love's a question mark going into this game, and it doesn't have the similar setup that you would like it if you're the Fighting Irish. So Penn State definitely has an opportunity here that's why I put them as the favorite. That's why I say they're the initial favorite. Even if Jeremiah Love was available, speaking that he is available in this game, we don't know. He's going to be a question mark. But I think that Penn State's offense, the passing game, Drew Allar, Tyler Warren, and then getting something from a Trey Wallace and Amari Evans. There's really Notre Dame's wide receivers. Right now it's Jordan Faison. And as Brian pointed out, they're going to try to force the ball to Mitchell Evans because they don't really rely on the receivers all that much. I think that Penn State has more options in the passing game and they can play from behind, but Notre Dame can't. So the similar setup here to Boise State and SMU, you sell out for the run and you force Riley Leonard into passing situations where receivers cannot win their one-on-one matchups. Also something to point out here, Brian let me know this after we had chatted. Notre Dame can't move the football on third down. That's why they try to make it 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, because it's easier to convert. But if you get them into anything that is 3rd and 5 plus, Penn State is in a favorable situation there. You want to force Notre Dame into third down, but they're not going to turn the football over. They're not going to make those costly mistakes. Penn State's going to have to earn every one of its stops, earn every one of its big plays, because Notre Dame is not going to give you any freebies. If we flip it over and look at Penn State's offense going up against Notre Dame's defense briefly here, Penn State, for its offensive line, needs to figure out its blitz protections, communications, whatever have you. I don't know what the breakdown exactly was against Boise State, and maybe we'll get an insight from James Franklin sooner rather than later, but they did not pick up the blitz very well. And if Boise State could be that effective with its pass rush blitzing, then so will Notre Dame. And Notre Dame doesn't even have to. Notre Dame's defensive line can get organic pressure, but if they turn up the heat and they blitz and go after Drew Allar, then you're really going to get a low scoring game. And we're talking maybe 6-3. I know that's an exaggeration. I think first team that gets to maybe 24, that gets you a win in this Orange Bowl game. But know that the defenses are going to have a lot of success, and it is up to the offense to manufacture something to get ahead of the opponent. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks to Brian for jumping on this episode and helping me out as our Fighting Irish expert. Please leave a like on this episode, share it with friends and family, be a part of the conversation down in the comments section. What are your keys to this game between Penn State and Notre Dame? If you're not already, become an everydayer. Subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams. And again, thank you so much for checking out this episode of Locked On Nittany Lions, and thank you for making us your first listen and watch every single day. For your second listen and watch, you got to check out Locked On Big Ten. It's hosted by Craig Sheeman, and Craig puts the Big Ten first when everybody else seems to overlook it, and the way that the SEC has self-destructed, Craig does a good job covering the Big Ten. It's available. Locked On Big Ten is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, and it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.